So this is the final lecture this semester, and I guess you can figure out who both sponsors the lecture and who the last speaker is. So Mr. Damien Weaver is responsible for the good smell in town. So he's going to tell you about success, about his journey, and how to work at a place that supplies you with a bill and chocolate.
Very good. Thank you, Dimitri. I'm going to take my mask off. They said I could do that since I'm a little further away, so help you to hear me a little bit better. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. Good. So I've got a few slides today. The topic I'm going to talk about is principled leadership. A couple of different reasons for that. One, the company that I work for right now is a very principle-driven company, and I've learned a lot from them. And I want to share with you some of my own personal leadership principles for my 25 years of work experience. So it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think it's something that will help you. So to get started just a little bit, I want to introduce myself just a little bit more. This is kind of a slide that we use within our company to introduce ourselves to new associates in the business, and I thought I would just pull from it to share a little bit about myself with you so you get to know who I am. I am the plant director for Mars Wrigley here in Elizabethtown. That's our factory that is right down the street from you. I've been here a year. We moved to town a week ago, or next week it'll be a year. So the Sunday before Thanksgiving, my family and I rolled into town for this job. And it's been a great experience over the last year living in this area. We lived right down the street from you for the first 6 months. We were your neighbor on College Avenue. We rented a home there while we were building a home in Landisville, and really loved walking around the campus when we were close by. Walked our dogs right on their sidewalk there, and it's just a beautiful campus, and I'm very thankful to be here, so I want to thank the college for having me here to speak today, because it's been a great experience for us to live in this area. So I'm originally from Mobile, Alabama. You might start to hear a little accent that's not familiar to you, maybe. I did grow up in the Southeast, and I lived most of my childhood years in Alabama. I went to school at the University of Alabama, so I'm a big college football fan, so roll tide for anyone who likes college football. And I'm a graduate of that university. I majored in communications and minored in marketing. And I'll tell you the journey that I've had from there to where I am today, and that'll start to build on my story around what I've learned around leadership in my career. But I went to school in Tuscaloosa, moved back to Mobile. I then moved to Tennessee. I lived in Tennessee in different places, Chattanooga to start with, and then over to Nashville, and then to a little town called Cleveland, Tennessee. Met my wife in Tennessee, had my 2 kids in Tennessee, and then we moved to Las Vegas. That's where we lived before we moved here. We lived in a suburb of Las Vegas called Henderson for 4 years. And it was a great experience to live on that side of the country. So prior to that, we had never lived outside the Southeast, and we moved to the West Coast, got to experience what that was all about, and then now we live, I guess, in the Northeast for the first time, and so we get to experience what this is like, and so far it's been great. So a lot of movement. I moved to Winchester, Virginia, and then back to Tennessee at one point in one of my companies before Mars, and that was prior to getting married and everything. So I've done a little bit of moving around. I've worked for 3 different companies in my career, and I've learned something from each one, and I feel like I'm going to share with you my story, but I feel like I've had 2 careers over the 25 years that I've worked, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So first company out of college was called American Woodmark. It's one of the leading manufacturers of kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities that's made in the United States. And they sold to home builders, but also to home improvement stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, and that was primarily my responsibility coming out of college. So After I left school at Alabama, I managed a sales territory for a few years, and I would go into Lowe's and Home Depot stores, and I would try and influence the people who worked in those stores to sell my product over my competitors to the consumers. And sometimes I would have to go out to the consumer's house when they weren't happy about something, and I'd have to deal with their complaints in their home, and I learned a lot from that experience as well. And so from that experience, I learned a lot about, working with different types of people. I had to deal with the store manager a lot of times. I had to deal with the designer in the kitchen department that was selling my product. I had to deal with the end consumer. And so when you're in a customer-facing role like that, in a consumer-facing role, it gives you a wealth of experience to draw from. And sometimes you don't recognize that experience or the value of it until you've left it. But now that I'm in a much different role in my career, I still look back at that experience in my first job of managing that territory and draw a lot from it. So I managed a territory, I had an expense account, they gave me a company car, I had to be independently motivated, I had to make my own schedule. It was my responsibility to go where I needed to go, do what I needed to do. And so I just learned a lot about personal leadership and personal motivation to do what I needed to do from that job, and so it was a great experience. I got promoted from there. I was an account manager calling on Lowe's corporate office, and then eventually, before I left the company, I was a national marketing manager for American Woodmark in their corporate office in Winchester, Virginia, which is near DC. After that, after those 8 years, I switched to a competitor. The primary reason was I wanted to get some experience in people leadership, team leadership that I hadn't gotten at American Woodmark, and there was a great opportunity for me to move back to Tennessee. I was dating my wife long distance at the time. She wasn't my wife at the time, I was just dating her. But we ended up getting married when I moved back to Tennessee. So that was also a motivation as well, because there's got to be a work-life balance for you to be successful long-term, in my opinion. And so it was a great opportunity for me to gain some professional skills that I didn't have in my career by leading a team of people directly, but it was also a good personal move for me. So I was a regional sales manager for a few years, and then I became the director of sales on a national level, and I managed an organization of salespeople across the United States and Canada before I left that company. Or I should say before the company left me, because I was let go from Masco in 2009 during the housing bubble. Masco is a conglomerate of home improvement companies like Behr Paint, Delta Faucets, Craft-Made Cabinetry, Merillat Cabinetry. It's a gigantic conglomerate of brands that sell home improvement brands, and I was on the cabinet division. And the housing bubble crashed in 2009, and after I had downsized a lot of the organization for them, I was downsized. So they let me go and they let my boss go in the same day. It was pretty earth-shattering because my whole 15 years of career was in the home improvement industry and the sales and marketing function, and it was the middle of what I call a depression. I was certainly depressed, and I didn't see a way out. I did not see how it was going to end, because in my mind I had what I called intangible skills. I didn't have an accounting degree. I couldn't go be a CPA. I couldn't do someone's taxes. I had a lot of leadership, relational skills. I had some marketing skills, but again, I felt it was very intangible, the benefits that I could offer a new employer. So I had a decision to make at that point in my career. I spent 15 years in the same industry. I had advanced. I was at a pretty high level. They gave me severance, so initially I didn't have to worry financially, but I didn't know how long it was going to last. So I had a child at home. My son, Dylan, was born. He was about 18 months. We owned a home in Tennessee. It was just a really scary time in my life, quite honestly. And I wasn't yet 40. I'd spent 15 years in the same industry, and I had to think, what's the best thing for me to do? I had all of my contacts in the home improvement industry. And I knew that I could probably get on with another company like the ones I had worked for and keep doing similar jobs that I've been doing. But I didn't feel like that was the right thing, because if this kind of situation happened to me again after about 5 or 6 more years, and I was 45, 46, and I spent 20-something years in the same industry, then, you know, someone would look at my resume and think, well, he can't do anything different. This is what he's, you know, this is the only thing he can do. So I made the decision to take the harder path, to think about what could I do different, how could I apply the skills and things that I've learned in a different industry. And Mars had an office in the Nashville area where we lived. And I was fortunate enough to get on with them in a supply chain role. So I started in the corporate office for Mars, in one of their corporate offices in supply chain. And I had enough relative experience managing supply and customer-facing roles. And this was a customer-facing supply role in customer service for Mars, managing some of their supply chain. And so I had a lot of, you know, relative experience to that, and I was able to get on. And from there, I had a really nice and caring manager, my first manager in Mars, that had worked in manufacturing. And Mars is a very big manufacturing company. And doing manufacturing in Mars is a very prestigious part of the company, because our brands, we make all of our own brands, and it's a very respected part of our company. And he encouraged me, he said, you know, you never worked in manufacturing, but I think you would be good at it. You should think about it and do some development to go and visit some of our manufacturing and see if you like it, because I think you'd like it. I think you'd be good at it. So I did that, and I ended up moving to Cleveland, Tennessee after a few years in Nashville, which is over near Chattanooga, and making M&Ms for Mars. So probably our most iconic brand that we make. It's the largest confectionery chocolate candy brand in the world, and I had the privilege to make that product in one of our largest factories in the world. And so it was something I never thought I would do, and it set me on a path of working in supply and manufacturing for Mars. And I've been with Mars now 12 years, and I went from there to a small factory plant manager job in the Las Vegas area, where we make a high-end gourmet chocolate brand. And then now to the Elizabethtown factory, where I'm the plant director here for one of our most important factories in the world. So, and I'll tell you a little bit about the factory here in a few minutes. So that's been a little bit about my professional journey. Along the way, I had my second daughter when I started, my first daughter, my second child, when I started working with Mars. She's now 10 years old. And they go to school right here in E-Town, a little private school on Market Street, and they love it. And my wife, Stephanie, we've been married for 16 years, and she works at the Whisk Cafe. She likes to be a barista part-time while the kids are in school, so if you ever go in there, you might see her serving coffee. Her name's Stephanie. You can say hello. And she really enjoys that, working there and getting out of the house and being a part of the community. So we really have made a home here in the first year that we've been here, and really enjoy it. So I'm into fitness. I've run a few marathons. Something else I never thought I would do. There's a lot of history and story behind that I'll get into as I go through the presentation. And I'm a person of faith, and so that drives a lot of my beliefs and values, and that's part of how I've developed my own leadership principles, which I'll talk about as well later in the presentation. So, what do you know about Mars? What are some things that you may know about Mars? Don't be shy. Well, you know we have a factory down the street, right? And you know we make some of this product. Some other things that you may not know about Mars, because a lot of people don't know a lot about Mars, so I'm not totally surprised that you're silent. We are one of the largest privately owned companies in the world. We're owned by the Mars family. It's a family-run business. We've been in business for over 100 years. We were started in 1911 by our founder, Frank Mars. And in about the year 2008, 2009, we acquired the Wrigley business. And so you may know us here in town as Mars Wrigley. That's what's on our signs, some of the smaller signs that we have around our factory. Because we purchased the Wrigley business and we merged the two confectionery companies together. But we're more than a candy company. We're actually the largest candy company, confectionery company in the world. But we're more than just a candy company. We're also the largest pet care, pet food, and pet services provider in the world. We own a lot of pet care brands and a lot of veterinary and pet nutrition services companies in the world. We also have a couple of other divisions that are smaller than those two. We have a food division, and we have what we call Mars Edge, but it's really a science division that looks at human nutrition and pet nutrition and looks at the sustainability of that over time and how we can advance that. So this is our factory from way back before we owned it. So the Mars factory that's here today was actually owned by the Klein brothers, and it was started in 1915. But Mars has been doing business in Elizabethtown for the last 90 years because we purchased chocolate from them before we purchased the factory from them in 1970. So we've been here owning this factory for 51 years. And, we consider ourselves a proud member and citizen of Elizabethtown. And we have a lot of roots here in the long history that we've been doing business here. This is our factory today. It's changed a lot. It's one of our most unique factories in the world. We do make the Dove product and the Milky Way product that you see here. We also make Three Musketeers. But what we really do the most of is we roast chocolate liquor. And it's not alcohol liquor, it's actually the substance ingredient that goes into making finished chocolate. And so we're the only factory in North America for Mars that roasts the cocoa bean into the industrial product that we call cocoa liquor, that is the base of the chocolate that we all enjoy in the finished product. So we make that, we roast the bean into the cocoa liquor, and then we use it some for ourselves, and we use it in all the rest of our factories in North America, as well as some other factories around the world. So we export that product to other Mars factories so that they can make the finished goods products that they make in their factories, like M&M's, Snickers, and all of our other varieties. Okay. You probably know us by our brands, and you've probably seen a lot of these brands before in the stores, and maybe even have purchase them and consume them for yourself or for your pets. This is not all of our brands, but these are some of our most notable across the different divisions that we own. And our brands are more out front than actually the Mars name. For a long time, the Mars company was a very private company. The family was very private, and a lot of how we were ran the business is very much a private organization. These days, we're a little more out front, and so the Mars name is becoming a little more prevalent to be known. But it hasn't always been that way. And so a lot of times people know us for our brands more than they know us for our parent name. Okay. So just a little history, and I'm not going to read this slide to you. I just highlighted a few things I wanted to focus on. We have been in business over 100 years. We've evolved our products. We started as a chocolate company, but not too long after we started 100 years ago, we got into the pet food business in Europe, and that now is all over the world with different brands and services. So we're as big of a company in the pet industry as we are in the candy industry. And again, we're the largest confectionery company, and pet care, pet services company globally with those two divisions. We are a principle-driven company, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about. So I'm going to share the Mars principles with you and talk to you a little bit about those before I talk to you about my own leadership principles. So these are the 4 divisions of Mars that I mentioned earlier. Pet care, Mars Wrigley are the 2 biggest, followed by food, and our science division, or what we call Mars Edge, which looks at sustainability of nutrition for humans and pets. In a snapshot, this is a little bit about Mars. So we were formed and founded in 1911 by Frank Mars, the founder of our company. He then passed that on to his children to run the business, and we have now the 5th and 6th generation of Mars family helping to run the business. We have over $11 billion brands globally. We are led by our 5 principles, which I'll talk a lot about in the upcoming slides. We have over 390 sites around the world. We're in 74 countries. This is a little dated because we're over 40 billion in sales now. And again, all privately owned, and we work with over 100,000 suppliers to do the business that we do globally. And our 5 principles lead the way. And so I'm going to talk about each one of those principles and how we use them. But it all started with, that's a cocoa pod with cocoa beans inside of those white little nibs. It all started with that, and a lot of that was started here in Elizabethtown where we were purchasing chocolate. So this is our purpose as a company, and today it's more important for companies, public or private, to let their consumers know what their purpose is as a company, because consumers care more today about what the company stands for and what they do and how they do it than ever before. And so, you know, this is out front for us. It's more about how we do business than what we do. And that is part of how we are built from our culture of being a principle-led company. So our purpose is the world we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. And how we do business is guided by our 5 principles. So what are the 5 principles? Quality, responsibility, efficiency, mutuality, and freedom. And so to us, those aren't just words on a wall. We actually use those principles to guide our decision making on a daily basis. And that's just not at my level as a senior leader in the company, but down to the entry-level role operator on the factory floor, or even an intern that comes in to work for us during this summer. We want them to know our principles and use our principles in guiding their decision making in their role. Now, what makes us unique? A lot of companies have principles, right? And the quality principle probably isn't unique in the world of business, at least manufacturing. Responsibility isn't totally unique. Efficiency, especially for a manufacturing company, isn't totally unique. But I think the things that set us apart is that we have 5 principles, not just 1 or 2, and that mutuality and freedom are unique to Mars, especially Mars as a scale business, an extremely large business. We have 175,000 associates around the world. I told you that we have 400 sites. We like to say that we make surprisingly sophisticated products at scale. So when you think about the millions and millions of products that we manufacture, it's not simple to do the things we do. And in fact, we shy away from launching products that are really easy to do because they can very easily be copied by a competitor and done at a lower cost. And so we try and make products that have a sophistication to them that not just anyone can replicate. So quality, it's our first principle. It's what the company was founded on. The founders of the company, the Mars family, are still as adamant about quality today as they ever were. And it's what we've built our business on, and it's what guides us. What the quality principle says is that the consumer is our boss, quality is our work, and value for money is our goal. So we're consumer obsessed with what we do, because that is what is going to make us successful as a company if we're giving the consumer what they want. And if they see value in the products that we provide for the price that they're being asked to pay for. But it starts with the work we do every day in the factory. And so a lot of times what I'll tell my team in the factory is, what does quality mean to you? And if they can talk about the way the product looks, or how it tastes, or things like that, what I try and explain to them is that's the result of quality. Quality is the things that you do every day to get that result. What are you willing to do to get that result? That's quality work. Do you do it to a standard? Do you do it consistently? Do you do it in a way that keeps the products food safe for consumers? That's quality work, and that's how we define quality in our business. Responsibility. You can't have a business if you don't have responsibility. But we stretch the definition of responsibility to mean more than just your actions or what you control within yourself, which we do expect that, but it's also about your fellow associates that you work with and the responsibility of others that are outside of that. So that could be your suppliers as well. And your corporate responsibility to the greater good of citizens that you do business with. Next is mutuality. This is one of those unique principles that I think makes Mars stand out differently than other companies. And mutuality says that a mutual benefit is a shared benefit, and a shared benefit will endure. And that means that it's not just about us as a big company trying to get the most from our vendor so that we're advantaged and they are not. It's about working together so that we both benefit from a relationship. And that goes for our consumer as well, right? And so it's about how do we make the product as efficiently and as good a quality as possible and offering a fair price for it. I think that is part of the mutuality principle. And it's also how we do our business and the impact that we have on the environment, on the citizens around our businesses, wherever they may be located. And then efficiency. So especially in manufacturing, efficiency is incredibly important, sorry. You cannot run an effective manufacturing site if you do not have efficiency. It's about doing things repetitively, the same, consistent, and when we talk about manufacturing at scale, it's high-speed manufacturing and replicating that on a consistent basis. And then freedom, one of those other unique principles to Mars. Because we are a privately owned company, we really believe that is part of our strength as a company. We're not beholden to shareholder expectations, so that on quarterly earnings reports, which we don't release because we don't have to, because there are no shareholders to serve, we are able to take a longer perspective on investments, on the cost structure of our business, and look over a longer period of time around what is good, instead of trying to manage our business in the short term for quarterly business results to improve our stock price. And so we find that is incredibly important to our business. And we define our freedom by the need freedom to shape our future, and we need profit to remain free. And so if we're not a profitable business, it doesn't matter if we're a privately family-owned company. But because we are profitable and because we are owned by a family, we can do some things that publicly traded companies aren't really able to do as effectively. An example would be a decision we made when we purchased Wrigley for billions of dollars. The purchase price was a very high amount, but it was worth it to do so. But we didn't borrow a single dollar from the bank to do it. We used our own leverage, and we borrowed from a private investor in order to put the capital forward to purchase that company, and then we pay the private investor off so they have no stake in the company whatsoever, rather than going to a bank that we would then be beholden to for part of our business, and then they would want leverage in order for us to make certain decisions. And so it's things like that that we've done as a business and as a family principal business that enabled us to grow to the point that we are today. So what does it mean to have principles? They only matter if you put them into action. If you live them out and make them more than just words on a wall, that's when they really become part of your culture and what's important for you. So I have a short little video here that I'll play that'll show you a little bit about what we're doing in the world around us, where our principles are put into action. Where's the, is this a touch screen? Do you know how to play the video from here?
The mouse should be, if you just pull out the
Keyboard?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. There you go.
This is a critical moment to change the trajectory we're on. With our Sustainable Intergeneration Plan, we've been clear that we want to help build the world we want tomorrow. One where the planet is healthy, people and pets are thriving, and society is inclusive. It is our vision of the future. Our plan is built on what is right, not what is easy. It is science-based and in support of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. With the increasing impacts of climate change, the pandemic, and social injustice, we're as committed as ever to the critical actions needed to tackle the environmental and societal threats we face. We have aggressive targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and our commitment to renewable energy now comes with costs that compete or lower than fossil fuel prices. We are also working to transform our agricultural supply chains, including accelerating efforts to eliminate deforestation in our key raw materials, such as palm oil. It's more critical than ever that we continue to play our part to meaningfully improve the lives of the million people we impact across our supply chain. We'll work to embed our values in our supply chain as we work on tough issues like human and worker rights, child labour and forced labour in partnership with our suppliers. But we're also working to enable consumers to make informed choices, to make safe food available to all, such as the work done by our Mars Global Food Safety Centre, partnering to tackle the most pressing food security issues, a particular focus, especially in light of the pandemic. What is clear is that more equal, inclusive, and sustainable business must be at the heart of recovery plans. At Mars, we're committed to driving action and reporting on progress on our Sustainable Intergeneration Plan as we continue our journey to help deliver a healthy planet on which everyone can thrive.
So one of the things that we've done, I think that lines up with many of our principles, but mutuality comes to mind, is many years ago, we actually, from our science division, mapped the genome of the cocoa bean. And that sounds kind of nerdy, but what it really did was it allowed us to understand how do we create a more sustainable cocoa product and that it's easier to grow and more profitable for those that grow it. And instead of keeping that information to ourselves, we actually published it so that all of our competitors, all of our suppliers, and everyone that we do business with could use it to better the supply chain that we are a part of. So now I want to switch from talking a little bit about Mars, and I want to share a little bit more about my own leadership principles and journey. So I've been privileged to have roles where I've been a leader of other people for many years of my career. And there's a lot of learning that I've had that I won't be able to share all of it today, but there are some things I'd like to share. But even if you're not a leader of others at any point in your life or in your career, I think there are some principles around leadership that you can take and apply for personal leadership as well. But where do principles come from? So, you don't just wake up one day and say, oh, my principle is this, or, I'm going to take that principle that I've heard and apply it to what I want, because, it really isn't, authentic to you at that point. And so I really encourage you to think about, where do principles come from? And my perspective is that you have to, think about your values and your beliefs. So let's define those terms a little bit before we move through those slides. So beliefs, for the way that I'll represent them today, for leadership, beliefs are propositions of truth that serve as the foundation or system of behavior. Values would be standards or ideals with which we evaluate actions, people, things, and situations. Principles would be the rules that govern our actions. And then if you think about the difference between values and principles, because a lot of people use those two terms interchangeably, and I did for a long time before I really kind of thought about it more, is that values act as the foundation for your principles. Okay? So, an example. Let's talk about the Mars principle one more time. So, the quality principle for Mars. Anybody remember what the quality principle was or anything that was involved in it? Anybody take a note on that? It's our first principle. Our quality department likes to remind everybody of that. It says that the consumer is our boss